Hello everyone, it's General Cliffy speaking. We have the privilege and the honor to have with us Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, the IDF International Spokesperson. Jonathan, thank you for taking the time and briefing to us about the current situation in Israel regarding to the escalation in the last 2 days in Gaza Strip. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, General. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with senior members, board, executives, and everybody else that you have on the line. I'm happy to be doing this. What I would like to do is to give a short rundown of the current situation as it is now, and then offer time for the participants to ask questions. So I spent today around Gaza in Ashdod, Ashkelon, and a few other places, visited Israeli troops, visited an Iron Dome battery, and spent some time with Israeli civilians in the south. The situation currently is as follows. If I roll back, of course, all events started with a very successful surgical strike that we performed, which was aimed at killing a specific terrorist. He was killed, as I'm sure you know, and with very little collateral damage, which, by the way, in the past hasn't always been the case, and this time this is actually what happened. And since then, the Islamic Jihad have been firing rockets at Israel. The last rocket was fired just a few minutes ago. And I know that you may have seen reports in the media or notifications that there's talk of a ceasefire. I can assure you that from the IDF perspective, not the political echelon, but from the IDF perspective, we are vigilant and remain on the highest alert. And from our point of view, nothing has changed in terms of our deployment and rules of engagement. A few facts and figures. We've sustained almost 400 rockets. Almost 400 rockets have been fired from Gaza towards Israel over the last 37 hours. Out of those, many missed their targets, and out of the rockets that may have hit Israeli cities, we deployed the Iron Dome system. The Iron Dome so far has been extremely efficient and has an interception rate of a little bit over 90%, which of course is excellent. It's not perfect, and I really don't think that any automatic defense system can ever be perfect, but this system is really, really close and has proved itself excellent in defending or protecting Israeli civilians. And what we saw over the last day and a half or 2 days was how the Islamic Jihad really tried to challenge the system with massive barrages on different cities, fired from different locations, and with weapons of different, or rockets of different caliber. All of these things done in order to try to beat the system, but I'm happy to say that the Iron Dome stood up to the task and has saved many, many Israeli lives over the last 2 days. We said from the get-go that our aim with the operation was simply to kill this terrorist, Baha Abu al-Ata, a senior commander in the Islamic Jihad, focused on Gaza, but not only. And once that was achieved, we didn't want to escalate the situation any further, mainly because of our concern for the lives of Israeli civilians and how conflict would affect them. Since Islamic Jihad continued firing rockets, we responded and we attacked quite a lot of military targets. So far, according to our intelligence, based on according to the information that we have, which is based on intelligence as well as reports from Palestinian media, we have counted 20 dead terrorists out of the 24 reported dead from Gaza, which I think is a very high number of enemy combatants, terrorists, who were all killed in joint operations by the Air Force, the Israeli intelligence, Southern Command, who together were able to intercept quite a few squads that were planning to fire rockets, and even one squad that was in the final stages of preparing to fire an anti-tank missile from the northeastern part of the Gaza Strip. You may remember that during May 2019, the last round of fighting between Israel and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, we had a similar incident where a anti-tank missile was fired, unfortunately hit an Israeli civilian vehicle, and an Israeli civilian was killed then, an older gentleman. So that's why we see the ability to detect and to preempt these attacks as a positive thing. In terms of other things that we've done, we of course immediately bolstered our defenses along the border, the Gaza division, which is already on high alert, but additional troops were summoned, and we enhanced our defenses, knowing that the Islamic Jihad might try to attack along the border as well. So elite infantry units were dispatched, and we of course rallied, or we summoned reserve forces, mostly for the intelligence array and for the Iron Dome operators and a few other places. All in all, so far it's been almost 2 days of fighting. I am relieved and happy that so far there have not been substantial, significant Israeli casualties. There have been a number of trauma and fear casualties, but at the end of the day, fortunately, no significant injuries for Israeli civilians. That is paramount, and that's probably the most important so-called statistic that we have. We will, of course, study, I'll wrap it up soon. We will, of course, study or continue to assess the situation and see if talks about ceasefire carry value in real life, and we will receive our directives and orders from the cabinet and from the Ministry of Defense. But so far, as we speak now, I am not aware of any different orders for the IDF. We remain on high alert and ready for any eventuality. I'd be more than happy to take questions. You can ask about the specific events now, and if you want to ask about anything else, a broader context, I'm happy to try to answer those questions as well. And just last thing before we do questions, I visited the Gaza division a few weeks ago, and was of course very happy to see in that base, as in so many other bases, facilities contributed by your great work, by the FIDF, and that's always a good thing to be reminded of, and of course to appreciate. So I'll be happy to take your questions.
Just want to know, what are the likelihood of Hamas joining forces with the Islamic Jihad?
So in terms of Hamas, I'll emphasize and say that so far Hamas has not participated in the fighting. On one hand, the good side is that they have not participated in the fighting and they have not fired at Israel. On the other hand, they haven't stopped the Islamic Jihad from firing rockets at Israel. So it's kind of a double-edged situation. According to our assessments, Baha Abu al-Atta, the Islamic Jihad commander, was quite the troublemaker for Hamas as well. He caused quite a lot of tension, disrupted activity, and didn't accept Hamas's authority and sovereignty. And I wouldn't be surprised if Hamas are as happy as we are that he is no longer around to destabilize and to interfere. We, of course, see it from a perspective of a terrorist who was planning severe attacks who is no longer able to do that. But from a Hamas perspective, I think they also made so far, and I hope that they will continue with this calculation, a cost assessment, understanding that going into a round of fighting with Israel would bring them lots of potential damage, and that doing it because a terrorist, an Islamic Jihad terrorist, was killed by Israel isn't quite a good enough cause to do it. But we are, of course, vigilant. We're not taking anything for granted. We know that we're dealing with two terrorist organizations, one Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, who currently, for their own reasons, are acting as they are. Bottom line, we definitely hope that this continues and that Hamas does not participate in the fighting, because then, of course, that would force us to respond in a more forceful manner.
How are you dealing with the Israeli civilian population, preparing them and keeping them safe? And also, how did Islamic Jihad get this amount of arsenal at this particular time?
So the first question regarding the Israeli civilians is, of course, extremely important for Israel as a country and for the IDF. The Home Front Command, its main mission is to care exactly for that in terms of the physical shelters, as well as the assistance needed to civilians. We spend a lot of efforts on, first of all, communicating clearly with the civilian population, the public, on the restrictions and on the safety measures that need to be taken. Second thing is that together with other government authorities, other ministries, we try to offer the assistance and support that's needed, which is not a one-off situation. Obviously, we're dealing here with complex situations where children and families are forced to spend significant periods of time in shelters. We understand that there's stress and might even be trauma, and there are specialists, mostly, I must say, not from the IDF, but from social services and other organizations who support the civilian population. Our main job, the IDF's main job, is to intercept the rockets, stop any attacks along the border, and to provide security for the people. In addition to that, of course, we try to do that while cooperating with the local authorities, while making sure that we communicate as clearly as possible, that we create clear conditions and understandable situations, and then work together with other government agencies to help and alleviate the suffering for the people. Regarding where the Islamic Jihad gets its weapons from, the Islamic Jihad is quite an extraordinary organization in the sense that even though it's a Sunni Muslim extremist organization, it gets its money and weapons, equipment, and a lot of its intelligence and tactics actually from Iran. And they've been able to smuggle in through Sinai mostly, but not only, quite a substantial arsenal. We're talking about thousands of rockets, not more than thousands, but thousands of rockets with different caliber. Unfortunately, we are talking about rockets that are capable of striking north of Tel Aviv. And this latest round of fighting they fired at Modi'in, which is 70 kilometers away. I'd say 45 miles approximately, and they also fired south of Tel Aviv. So significant capabilities, unfortunately. If we compare it to Hamas, Hamas has 3 or 4 times more the amount, but in terms of quality, it's more or less the same capability. I hope that answers the question, ma'am.
I assume that these missiles are being assembled in Gaza with Iranian parts. Is that a good assumption?
Yes, sir. Most of the missiles, or the rockets, I should say, most of the rockets that the Islamic Jihad has, most of them are assembled and even manufactured inside Gaza. A lot of the material that they use is brought in from out of the Gaza Strip. During today, we attacked 2 workshops or production facilities, one for warheads and the other one for the body of the rockets that belong to the Islamic Jihad, one of them in Rafah, in the extreme part, southern part of the Gaza Strip, and one in Khan Yunis. So today we destroyed 2 facilities that are related to the manufacturing of rockets. They have those rockets, and they have actually become quite efficient in manufacturing rockets, but they also have mostly weapons that they've been able to smuggle in before that, complete weapons, usually Iranian rockets of different caliber and different range. So it's a mix of both, but the Islamic Jihad, they spend a lot of resources on manufacturing rockets. Basically, if I look at what they spend most of their money on, it will be rockets and tunnels, digging tunnels under the border into Israel, and manufacturing rockets. Now, I'll say a word about tunnel warfare and what's going on right now. The Gaza border with Israel is approximately 40 miles, and out of those 40 miles, we have already completed roughly 2/3 of that distance, maybe a little bit more, with an underground wall, an obstacle that is designed to be a hard wall against any digging or excavating of tunnels. It goes all along the border between Israel and Gaza. It is packed, it's basically a 3 feet thick concrete wall with lots of sensors that will provide 2 functions. One, a hard wall that will be difficult to dig through, and second, a sensor so that we'll know if anybody is trying to excavate through it. And that is slated for completion for the first quarter of 2020. And that's another aspect of what the Islamic Jihad is doing. Again, context here, since October 2017, the IDF has exposed and destroyed 20 cross-border attack tunnels that were dug by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad from Gaza into Israel. And we hope, our intention is, that the underground wall will provide another and perhaps final layer of security and protection against these tunnels.
Is there any indication of threats increasing from the north, specifically from southern Lebanon or Syria?
Thank you for that question. It's, of course, something that we monitor continuously. When we think about the severity of the threat that is posed by Hezbollah and by Iranian proxies in Syria, but mostly by Hezbollah in Lebanon, then, of course, that is a much more significant military threat than what exists in Gaza. And therefore, we focus quite a lot of our intelligence capabilities on that specific area. As of now, without even sounding a little bit complacent, we have not seen an elevated level of threat from the north, but we remain very vigilant, understanding fully well that just as the Islamic Jihad is an Iranian proxy and might be receiving orders from Iran, another Iranian proxy could be receiving orders to attack Israel from the north, and that is of course what makes it so necessary for us to be vigilant and on guard from the north as well.